Not everyone gets called the bride. Some were only meant to attend the feast. There was a voice, echoing long before time had a name, a promise carved into blood, not parchment, before the throne, before the temple, before even sin there was a vow. And it was not spoken in a synagogue, but in the first garden where the Creator stood among the dust, and whispered, "It is not good for man to be alone." And the story began. In that primeval world, where light had never been stained by shadow, God did not establish an empire. He did not inscribe a constitution. He prepared a wedding. He placed his hand on Adam's left side, close to the heart, and from there, not from the soil, but from flesh and bone, he called forth Eve. Not a companion, a covenant. The first words from human lips were not complaint. They were recognition. At last, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. And there, in a garden untouched by death, the covenant was sealed. Two became one, not by ink, but by breath, not by signatures, but by life poured out. And if you wish to understand the love of Christ for his church, you do not begin at the cross. You must return to the garden, to the place where the first vow was carved, in rib and in word, before Eve ever took form from Adam's rib. There was something deeper than creation intention. The intention of a God who did not simply craft mankind to exist, but to become one. He breathed into the man's nostrils, and with that breath, he gave not only life, but part of himself. The sacred flowed from heaven into dust, and that breath it did more than raise Adam from the ground. It laid the foundation for what was to come, a living covenant. It was no accident that man was shaped from earth but sustained by breath. For man is not merely matter, he is the embodiment of a heavenly intention. Before there were nations, before there were laws, before there were priests, God wrote into Adam's loneliness a longing that no tree nor beast could satisfy. And he saw it as not good for man to be alone. That was not just an observation. It was a sacred bell, ringing through a perfect universe, declaring that even in Eden, something was missing. Not because the trees were not green, not because the rivers were not clear, not because life was incomplete, but because life had no one to share it with. And from the place closest to the heart, he called forth Eve, not from the head that she might rule over man, not from the feet that he might trample her, but from the side equal, where blood flows, where hearts beat, and breath meets breath. The covenant of marriage, before there were rituals, was already a vow without words. Adam was never taught how to love. He was awakened by a presence he recognized as something lost. Now found, "This is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." It was not an exclamation. It was the original vow. The first words of love were not, "I love you." They were, "You are me." In that place, a cathedral without walls, without roof, was raised by the very hands of the Creator. And he stood as the witness, the officiant, and the father who gave the bride away. From that moment on, marriage was no longer a product of culture. It became an image of heaven. When Scripture says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." This was not mere law, it was prophecy. A prophecy of the one who would leave his father, leave his throne, step into dust to claim an unclean bride. And he would not merely speak love, he would bleed it. He would not only keep her, he would join her to his very body. Adam slept and awoke to find his wife. Christ would die and rise again to meet his bride in glory. Every vow of marriage must be measured by that first breath, the breath that built every covenant. Not the rings, not the invitations, not the altar, but a holy intention that you would not be alone. and that loneliness would be undone by a love rooted in the breath of heaven. True love does not rise from wholeness. It emerges from a wound. When God created Eve, He did not use clay. He did not summon light or wind. He did not speak as He did when He formed stars or seas. He opened Adam's side. In a deep, dreamless sleep, a cut was made not with a blade, but with sacred intent. No blood is described, but sacred blood was surely spilled. And from that place, Eve was formed not like other creations, but as a part torn from within. This was the first covenant sealed not with ink, but with torn flesh, with opened bone, with something lost so something greater could be found. It was a prophetic image of the new covenant when Christ, too, would sleep in death, His side pierced by a Roman spear, and from it would flow blood and water, a sign of the church being born. From Eden to Golgotha, every covenant vow has passed through a wound in the side. The bride did not step forth from light. She came from pain. She was not shaped from earth. She was born from the heartbeat closest to the heart. Pause. Remember, blood, water, and promise flowed in the same direction. It was no accident that when the spear struck Christ's side, both water and blood poured out. Water for cleansing, blood for sacrifice. It was a wedding in the darkness of Skull Hill. Sacred love is not just a hand held in daylight. It is the laying down in shadow, the tearing open, that something more sacred than life might be born. Covenant requires more than witnesses. It requires a wound. And no one knows this better than the Creator who opened Adam's body to bring forth Eve, and later opened His own sons to bring home His church. Eve was Adam's bride, but she was also a symbol of the church. Christ is the bridegroom, and the church is the bride not crafted, but called forth from the wound. So when marriage today becomes convenient, contractual, and disposable, we must return to the wound in the side, where love is not measured by emotion but by blood. There is a vow that was not spoken with lips, but with blood, not made in a chapel, but on a cross, not beneath soft music, but through screams, spit, and the crack of whips. They didn't call it a wedding. They called it an execution. But on Golgotha's hill, as the earth shook, as the sky darkened, as blood poured, a bridegroom was keeping his promise. He didn't hold flowers. He held a cross. He didn't wear a suit. He wore wounds. He didn't come to give a ring. He came to give himself. Each step up the hill was a step in a sacred marriage. Each fall beneath the weight was a declaration, I love you unto death. He was not forced to wed. He chose to. He was not compelled. He offered. Because covenant love does not wait for the other to be worthy. It chooses even when the beloved is unfaithful. That is what happened on the cross. Not justice, but a vow kept in love. Father, forgive them, was not a plea, it was a vow spoken not in ceremony but between final breaths. Today, you will be with me in paradise, was not a passing promise. It was the heart of a bridegroom who would not abandon anyone, not even the thief nailed beside him. When blood flowed from the hands that once touched the blind, when thorns pierced the brow that once bowed to wash feet, when shoulders bore the lash that once carried lost sheep, then love ceased to be a concept. It became flesh, bone, blood, and groaning. When he said, "It is finished," the heavens trembled, the temple veil tore in two, and the covenant was sealed not with ink, but with blood. Not accidental blood, wedding blood, Just as in the ancient covenants of the fathers, blood had to be shed for a vow to be confirmed. And when the Lamb's blood poured out, that vow did not bind just one, it opened the wedding door to all mankind. Imagine it, heaven holding its breath as the groom was lifted high, not because they didn't know the ending, but because they knew what it meant. Imagine the bride runaway, betrayer, lover of the world now watching her groom, bleeding, but still loving, still waiting. This is not the love of wedding invitations. This is love carved in thorns, in nails, in whips, and in silence. A vow with no applause, no petals tossed, no decorations, only split earth, opened graves, and heaven bearing witness. That vow still echoes today. No one forced him, no one persuaded him, he chose to love, to endure, to never turn away. And when we look upon the cross, we don't just see our sins carried, we see a bridegroom waiting for his bride to return. Not with a ring, but with nails, not in a veil, but in a burial cloth, not to music, but in the silence of a heaven undone. He already spoke. He will not say it again. The covenant is sealed. The question is not if he will keep his vow. The question is, will we come back? There is no wedding without a price, and there is no true love that does not pay one. In ancient Jewish weddings, before a groom could marry, he had to offer a gift to declare the worth of the bride. Not because she was for sale, but because she was worth valuing. The man would go to the woman's house. He would not arrive empty-handed. He brought the mohar, the bride price. It was not just a gift. It was a declaration in action. She is worth more than silver or gold. She is not cheap. I will pay. And when Jesus came, he did not bring silver. He did not bring jewels. He brought his body. No one forced him. He gave himself. No one set the value. He decided she is worth my life. And he signed the bride price not with pen, but with nails. Not on a table, but on a cross. Paul wrote in Ephesians 5:25, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." That is not a moral suggestion. It is a covenant standard. When we think of love, we think of feelings. But when God thinks of love, he thinks of blood. He loved them to the end. John 13:1. To love is not to love until it hurts. It is to love through the hurt. As blood dripped drop by drop, beat by beat, breath by breath, heaven did not turn its face because he suffered. Heaven turned away because he was paying a price none could understand. Not because we were worthy, but because he decided we were. This bride price was not placed in velvet. It was placed on a hill. There were no candles, only noonday darkness. No poetic vows, only a final whisper through blood, Father. It is finished. And when it was finished, heaven had not just concluded an execution. It had sealed a proposal. What did he pay for a bride who had betrayed, a people who had worshipped idols, a humanity that chose flesh over glory? And still, he bought her back. Hosea stood in the slave market and saw Gomer, the wife who had left him, who had lain with others, now sold like goods. And God said, "Buy her back. Love her as I love Israel, though she is unfaithful." Hosea 3:1. That was the shadow. Jesus is Hosea. We are Gomer, and the marketplace of the world is where he stepped in, pointed to the one who betrayed him, and said, "I pay the price. She is mine." Not every love is worth trusting, but any love that pays the price is never cheap. God does not love because he feels. He loves because he placed his heart inside a covenant. And so when he said, "I go to prepare a place for you," It was not a poetic promise, it was part 2 of the marriage covenant. Because after the bride price was paid, the groom would return to his father's house to build the bridal chamber. Only when the father said, "It is ready," could the groom go and claim his bride. We now live between the price paid and the feast to come, between the blood already shed and the veil not yet worn, between the vow already spoken and the wedding not yet begun. And in that space, every drop of blood is a reminder you are so precious. I would not pay anything less than my very life, in ancient Jewish tradition, after the bride price was paid. The groom did not take the bride home immediately. He returned to his father's house, not to delay, but to prepare. A new room was built within the father's dwelling, a place where he and his bride would live after the wedding. And only when the father said, "It is ready," was the groom permitted to return. Jesus knew this well, and in John 14 he said, "In my Father's house are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go, I will come back and take you to be with me where I am." This was not metaphor, it was betrothal. And instead of a paper contract, he left behind a covenant sealed in blood. The betrothal cup was shared on the final night, the Last Supper. When he lifted the cup, he said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, poured out for you." Luke 22:20. It was wine, but not to intoxicate. It was the cup of covenant, the cup a groom would offer his bride on the day of engagement. If the bride accepted and drank, it meant, "I agree, I am yours." When the disciples drank that night, they were not just sharing a meal, they were becoming the bride. And from that moment on, every believer in Christ lives in a sacred state, betrothed, being prepared, awaiting return. But betrothal is a season of vulnerability, for the bride does not see the groom every day. The groom is gone, the waiting is long. And it is in the waiting the enemy whispers, "He's not coming back. The price wasn't enough. You could love someone else." The covenant is not yet complete, and in the ache of delay, many forget to whom they belong. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 11:2, "I have betrothed you to one husband, to present you as a pure virgin to Christ." He wasn't speaking to married couples. He was speaking to the church, the bride, waiting for the wedding. That is why holiness is not a burden, it is preparation. Because no one betrothed lives as if unspoken for. We, the church, are not an institution. We are the bride already engaged. We wear an invisible ring, sealed in covenant blood. And so every day we live not to earn love, but to protect the love already promised. We do not walk in righteousness for fear of being abandoned. We walk in purity because the bridegroom is worthy. One day he will return, not as a distant lover, but as the one who promised, who prepared, who fulfilled. And on his lips will not be poetry, but the quiet, familiar vow. "I have come to bring you home." A divine invitation was sent down from heaven, wrapped in blood, tied with wind, sealed with the Spirit. "Prepare, the bridegroom is coming." But he did not give the day. He did not reveal the hour. He only said, "Be ready." And with that invitation, a waiting began. Not a waiting of rest, but of watchfulness. Not the waiting of a guest, but of a bride. Jesus told a story of 10 virgins, of lamps, of oil, and of midnight when all grew weary. All fell asleep. 10 were invited. 10 had lamps. 10 longed for the groom. But only 5 brought oil, and when the cry rang out at midnight, "Behold, the bridegroom comes," the other 5 ran out to search. But it was too late. The door was shut. Not because they were evil, not because they were rejected, but because they were unprepared. Keeping the lamp lit is the bride's responsibility. No one can do it for her. No one can share their oil. For oil is personal preparation. Oil is hidden holiness. It's prayer in the midnight hours no one sees. It's resisting temptation when no one's watching. It's faithfulness in the mundane, steadfastness in the silence. And it is those quiet things that become the oil. If the bride does not prepare, if she has no lamp, she is still invited, but she will be left behind. Not because the bridegroom is cruel, but because the wedding cannot be delayed for those not ready. So today, who are we? Are we lamp keepers or excuse makers? Are we waiting truly or forgetting slowly? Is our lamp still burning? Is there oil in our soul? Or are we living off old light memories of a faith that once burned bright? Love, when not nurtured, grows cold. Fire, without oil, fades. And a true bride does not live on emotion. She lives on the discipline of covenant love. To keep the lamp is to keep a posture of readiness, not laziness, not passivity, not indifference. To keep the lamp is to keep the heart awake, to know no matter how long the night, the bridegroom is coming. And when the trumpet sounds, when the sky tears like a veil, when the Lamb appears in the clouds, only the bride with the lamp will be brought in. If today is midnight, if the cry goes out, behold, the bridegroom comes. Can we rise? Is our lamp still burning, or are we scrambling for oil in desperation? Don't wait for the sound of the door closing. Don't let tears fall outside the feast, for entry belongs only to those already ready. The bridegroom does not come to wake. He comes to take, and when he comes, only the watchful will go with him. A sky so white, no earthly language can contain it. No more betrothed, no more keep your lamp, no more in between. The wedding supper of the Lamb has begun. And every soul who kept faith in silence is now called by name. Revelation 19:6-9 declares, "Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory, for the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready." It wasn't angels who opened the feast. It was heaven itself torn once more like a veil, but this time, not for sorrow, for celebration. A trumpet echoes across the universe. Heaven quakes, earth holds its breath, the sea stills, and the darkness recoils. The bridegroom appears no longer in blood, but clothed in light, no longer crowned with thorns, but wearing many crowns. He does not simply emerge, he is escorted, like a king long awaited from realms unseen. The bride no longer trembles, she feels no shame, she is no longer stained. Her gown is not of cloth, but of righteousness, woven with tears and self-restraint. Every thread a season of Lent, every knot a temptation refused, every layer a moment she did not betray. And the angel proclaims her name. Behold the bride of the Lamb, the one who kept her heart amidst the marketplace. There are no guests of honor, there are no outsiders. All who kept the lamp, kept the oil, kept the vow are the story itself. The table stretches endlessly, thrones gleam like frost. No shadows dwell here, for the Lamb is the light. There are no servers, for those who once served are now seated at the head. There is no menu, for he is the bread. There is no common wine, for the covenant cup is poured one last time, no longer to remember blood, but to proclaim glory. And in that sacred stillness, things happen no tongue can describe. Every tear vanishes like it never was. Every fractured memory dissolves like smoke. Every accusation of the enemy falls silent, as if it never dared exist. And the eyes of the bridegroom meet each one as if they were the only one. John said, "I saw the New Jerusalem prepared as a bride," because it is not just the bride who is made new. The cosmos itself is reborn in this wedding. The holy city is not a dwelling, but a divine womb, rebirthing all creation. This wedding does not just marry people, it marries order. It marries the universe. It redeems what broke in the first garden. From Eden to this feast, how much blood has been spilled, How many cries have echoed, how many died with hope unfulfilled. Now they live again in a feast that will never end. And the bride, you, me, us will not sit timidly. We will raise our cup with the very hand that once bore nails. And he will not speak to angels, he will speak to us. You have come, you kept the vow, you are mine. And as we lift the cup, no one will speak of sin, only one song will rise. Worthy is he has wed us, he kept his promise, he never let us go. If today you are still waiting, if today your lamp still burns, if today your oil is still full, then the table still has room, and the final wedding cup is still being poured. Covenant is not a moment. It is a depth, not a fleeting ritual in history, but the lifeblood running through the universe. When a vow is signed in blood, it does not fade with time. It flows, it seeps, it weaves into the fabric of creation. Covenant is the bloodstream of existence. From Eden to the cross, from the wedding feast to the New Jerusalem, every step God takes moves to the rhythm of covenant. And in that covenant, no one is a spectator, no one is outside. All of us are being called to live as those who already belong. But to live worthy of a blood-bound covenant, we cannot live shallow. We cannot love halfway. We cannot be faithful in the service, but betray in the shadows. Covenant demands the whole person. The bride is not beautiful only on her wedding day. The true bride is the one who understands the weight of the words I do. That weight is covenant. It's the midnight prayers no one hears. It's standing in temptation and choosing holiness. It's hurting, yet holding on. It's believing when nothing is seen. It's loving without any reason except the vow. Why live differently? Why keep yourself? Why stay faithful in a faithless world? Because we were chosen. We no longer belong to this world. We no longer carry the name of flesh. We bear another name, Bride of the Lamb, and that name is a whisper every morning. Today, I will live as one who belongs. Today, I will love as one who has been wed. The depth of covenant is this. God does not seek perfection. He seeks loyalty. He does not require heroes. He looks for those who do not walk away. A love that runs deep is a love that endures time, silence, and distance. And if today, the heavens are silent, no miracles, no emotions, it is not because he has forgotten. It is because he trusts you still remember. The depth of covenant is not found at the wedding. It is found in every day after, when the flowers are gone, when the white dress is folded away, when the songs are silent, and all that remains is will. And there true love begins. True love is not the vow made in a moment of glory. It is the quiet steps that keep the vow when no one is watching. So today, if someone asks you, "Why do you live this way? Why don't you give up? Why do you still believe in the middle of the marketplace?" Just smile and answer, "Because I am married. I signed a covenant, and my bridegroom, he's still keeping his vow. The wedding feast is over. The trumpet has faded like breath held in reverence. The angels fold their wings, withdrawing into the hush of glory, the radiance once pouring through heaven's expanse, now stilled. And all that remains are two. No throne, no laurels, no blinding coronation light. Just a closed room, a breath drawn close, a whisper soft enough to silence eternity. The bridegroom, he who once roared from the burning bush, who shook Mount Sinai, now speaks, low and deep, like waves buried in the ocean's soul. You are mine. After every cry through the history of redemption, after every drop of blood beneath the cross, after every groan in the tabernacle, every thunder from the prophets, every tear at Golgotha. This is the moment he longed for, not the celebration, not the splendor, but her gaze seeing him no longer through a mirror dimly, but with eyes restored in glory. His voice no longer pressed through pages, but dissolving like incense at the edge of her ear. I have loved you with an everlasting love, and now there is no more distance between us. Fingers once pierced by nails now touch her cheek, no longer stained with blood, but still marked by memory, the memory of a God who never forgets a vow. And when she places her hand over his, it is not ritual. It is the motion of a soul that has been called home. She no longer trembles. She no longer bows with shame. She no longer strains to be worthy. For his eyes do not search, they see, like deep wells that reach the bottom without asking. And when he whispers, "You are beautiful, without flaw," she does not dismiss it. She does not argue. She does not fear deception. She simply closes her eyes and lets that love soak into her like old wine through new skin. This is where vows cease to be sound and become breath. Shared. Where two souls, having wandered through epochs apart, now touch like torn halves of a temple, restored. Every worship song ever sung becomes heartbeat. Every confession once wept becomes a wordless love song. He does not mention hell. He does not recount wounds. He does not ask her to remember sin. He simply leans in, shoulders once burdened by the cross now wrapped around her, and he asks, not with lips, but with eyes, "Do you know how long I've waited for this?" No one answers, because in that silence is the holiest reply. This is the chapter found in no theology, quoted by no sermon, known only beyond the closed door where love stops explaining and simply is. No cameras, no angels recording, just two, a bridegroom with no more blood, a bride with no more tears, and a covenant now breathed as one. In that space, every question ends. No more philosophy, no more doctrine, no more striving, only him and her, eternal covenant. 1. The bride has been taken, the covenant fulfilled. But before the eternal door closes, the bridegroom leans in and whispers one last thing into his beloved's ear. "Don't let them forget me." In a realm of glory where no tears remain, he still remembers those who weep. In light that knows no more night, he still thinks of those keeping their lamps lit. And like a husband leaving a final letter before a long journey, he places in the bride's hands a mission. "You have entered. Now go back and call them in. Not back to hell, not back to wandering, but back to the old roads, to become a reminder. A reminder that there is a bridegroom who paid in full. There is a covenant that cannot be broken. There is a table still set, and a wedding cup not yet emptied. The bride doesn't become a preacher. She becomes a living witness. Every glance carries glory. Every word holds the incense of the secret chamber. Every action whispers, I have seen him. He is real, and he is waiting for you. Not everyone will hear, not everyone will believe, but she lives not as one trying to persuade, but as one who has wed, who knows, who belongs. The world looks and asks, why do you love like that? Why don't you crave fame? Why aren't you afraid to die? And with a voice steady, without regret, she answers, because I have been loved, and that love has no ending. They will try to silence her, turn her into religion, dogma, ritual, but she is not a system. She is the bride of the King. And every time she speaks, the earth will remember Eden. Every step she takes, the wind will carry the scent of wedding to the doorsteps of the hopeless. Because true love is never kept for oneself. True love always carries a mission. This may be the final chapter of the ceremony, but it is the first chapter of the covenant after and the bridegroom's voice still echoes in the bride's heart and in ours. I have wed you. Now go, and remind them they too are invited. And if you're still listening, maybe you are the one being called home. Not to embrace religion, not to memorize rules, but to enter a covenant that has awaited you since you were woven in your mother's womb. A covenant sealed in blood, a love that never retreats, a feast with room still at the table, and a bridegroom still waiting. The end, the covenant sealed, the love complete. And if you are still here, perhaps something deep within you just got touched. At Tales of Black, every story is a ritual, a reminder that some memories aren't kept in books, but in blood and bone. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone still lost in the dark. Subscribe so you don't miss the next ritual. And if there's a legend, a memory, a haunting that you want to hear, leave it in the comments. Who knows, your story might be the next one told beneath the flame. If you're still here, thank you not just for watching until the end, but for walking with us on this journey to awaken a forgotten truth. At Tales of Black, we don't tell stories for shock value. We tell them to remember, to reclaim, and to honor the spiritual legacies the world tried to erase. Truth wasn't lost, it was erased. Now we remember. Disclaimer: all content is created for educational, cultural, and storytelling purposes only. We do not promote hate, racism, or religious bias. This channel encourages open thought, respectful dialogue, and the honoring of sacred histories that have long been ignored. If something in this story stirred your spirit, please like, share, subscribe, and leave us a comment below. Your voice might just inspire the next story we tell. We truly hope you'll join us for the stories still to come.